We're back with another episode of Mask Off Therapy, episode 7. Today we got Mike and Dani. They're going to tell us a little bit about it themselves and let us know the kind of things that they went through growing up and how they're keeping it together these days and not falling into drug addiction and keeping things positive. These guys went through a lot growing up, and I think we're just going to kind of let y'all take it from here and tell us a little bit about yourselves and what you got going on.
You want to start?
Yeah. So I'm Dani. This is Mike. This is my husband. We've been married for 2 years now. Our story is kind of crazy how it came about, but we met on Tinder.
Whoa!
It was a thing. It was a thing for people who were working multiple jobs and didn't have time for the night scene.
It's really not that abnormal these days for online, hooking up online and turning into a serious relationship.
Right?
It's not frowned upon anymore.
And we at first were keep it on the low,
yeah,
but the more you talk about it, the more you realize that it's super normal nowadays, especially with quarantine in 2020. We were not allowed to leave our houses. This was more, I was a little bit of a homebody and worked a lot, and he lived out on a ranch in the middle of nowhere, so that was his way to meet people.
Explains the beer.
Yeah.
I'm sure a lot of people know y'all from Dutch Bros.
Yes,
and stuff.
yes. So I worked at Dutch
about?
Bros. Yeah, so I've been at Dutch for 7 years now. He worked at Dutch for about 4 years. He's in the middle of a job transition right now, but that kind of also had a huge part in our little romance, because when we got together, I was super active in Dutch, and I saw his heart and who he was, and we all know Dutch is positivity and just really trying to be a support for people and each other, and it's a place where we take people in to be a stepping stone to get them where they want in all paths of life. And I just saw his heart to be better people and but I don't know, you see something in people, and I obviously did from the get-go. When I first met him, within 10 minutes of conversation on Tinder, we were I was yeah, I'm from kind of the East Coast in Oregon. It's a long story, but basically I grew up in the system and I was adopted, and he was wait, what? I grew up in the system. I was not adopted, but super similar, and I was oh, how old were you? He was I was 5, and I was shit, me too, dude. So our ages lined up.
Then you guys found out you guys were actually brother and sister.
That was
twins.
Who's your dad?
I don't know my dad. Do you know your dad?
Yeah.
So it's shoot this shot, right?
Definitely.
No, but getting to know you guys, I wouldn't have thought that y'all went through the things that y'all did go through growing up, and being able to be who you are now.
Yeah.
Right.
I think what I admired most about our first conversation, and it's so cliche, what you ask for in the universe and what you need in a time, if you're spiritual, believe in God, Buddha, whatever it is, just a higher power. I was asking for that in my life. I was I need someone that knows I can be me with, that I don't have to put a mask on, that I don't have to pretend I'm okay, that my feelings, they know, they're I know what you feel. It's so easy to go through life, and you guys are hearing other people's stories and to be dude, I know what you're feeling, I know, but it's do we? You have to show some serious humility, understanding for people to really listen, and that's what I wanted. It wasn't necessarily a life partner I was asking for.
It was more of a friend.
A serious, a good friendship.
Next thing I know, he was placed in my life in that conversation.
That's how healthy relationships are.
Yeah.
You're, Josh and April, me and my wife, we're best friends.
Yeah, you start deep. I think it's important to it's
I have
easy
a
to
best
have.
friend too.
But
What's
the average person can't even relate to what
Sorry, Marianne.
half of the shit that y'all been through.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So to be able to connect on that level.
Yeah. And I think when we connected on that, I was I found somebody that I could say you took being the victim to the victor, you didn't let that define you, against adversity and really devastating circumstances. You made it transformative like process. Like
Were you like ashamed of your past or
for
something?
a while, yeah,
Were
I
you?
would say.
Why?
Well, can we get y'all to kind of tell us a story about
Yeah. So like answering that question
from the
about like
beginning, I
being
guess, you know?
humility, I guess, growing up in the foster care system. This is like a story that like always stuck to me as a kid. Growing up in elementary school.
Real quick, you say growing up in a foster system. At what age did you enter?
So I entered foster care just before my 6th birthday. It was like 2 weeks before my 6th birthday. We ended up transitioning into a foster care system through that. So what it all started was I was a little kid, vaguely remember stuff, you know, like, but as a kid, you retain a lot more. As you grow up, it starts like, oh my gosh, I remember a lot
like
more than when I was a
surfacing in
kid.
different ways, yeah.
And all I remember is that my mom was really addicted to drugs at the time, anything like from meth to heroin. And I remember just going to school one day, just an average day, getting up, grabbing my backpack, going to a school bus, getting dropped off, and it was probably like 2 hours into my schooling. Reno PD showed up to my classroom, and they're like, "Hey, Michael, can you come with us for a second?" And I was like, "Okay," like thinking I was in trouble. I was like, maybe I shouldn't have told that person or bullied that person on recess, or you know, called them a name. And I was like going out there, and I was just like asking, you know, like what's going on. And I was really scared that I was in trouble, and they're like, "Hey, everything's okay. We just need you to come with us." And I was like, "Okay." So we go down to the principal's office, and principal kind of talked to me, and they're like, "Hey, so you're gonna go with them." And next thing you know, this lady shows up from CPS, and she's like, "Hey, so you're gonna come with us, you're gonna get into this van." And it was kind of weird, didn't know, still really didn't answer any questions of what was going on. So I remember getting into this van.
Government kidnapping.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
And so they got us into this van, and my brother, so I grew up with 2 biological brothers, and they both come into the van too, because we all went to the same elementary school. And I remember they took us to this house, and as soon as we got to this house on the opposite end of town, they got us out, and this lady comes out, and that was our foster mom from here on then. And she comes in, and all they said, and I'll never forget this too, is, "Hey, you're only gonna be here for a few weeks."
Right.
And I was like, okay. And you know, I was the very fortunate one in foster care. I only went to 2 different homes. But with this house, I was there for like 12, 13 years. And I always made a joke out of it saying, oh, you know, 2 weeks later equals 13 years. But, you know, after that, you know, we just stuck with that house, always thinking that we were going to go home. And then we went to a court case one time for, you know, like our family. It was like a family courtroom that we went in, and we saw our mom sitting there. And the judge pretty much just was like, hey, you weren't able to keep clean, you weren't able to do these classes, so we're completely taking your parental rights. You will never get your kids back ever again, and slam the hammer.
Damn.
And you got to witness all that?
Yeah, so we had to be there for those. We sat, you know, like in these chairs behind everyone.
Yeah.
How old were you when that happened?
So at that point, when she got her rights completely taken away, it was probably like 3 years into the system, so I was like 8 years old. And
Did you at that point feel like you were doing anything wrong?
to be honest with you, like, I was still really confused.
Yeah.
Because I couldn't comprehend what was still going on. I was like, what did she do? Like, I didn't know anything about drugs, of course, you know, so didn't know anything. I just knew that from what I was told from like the care and from my foster parents that, you know, she just did some really bad things, and she may not be a bad person, but she just did really bad things to lose you guys.
Right.
And so,
What was you guys' relationship like with your mom?
so it was pretty interesting. You know, she really cared for us. She always made sure that we had food and of course shelter over our head. But you know, like there'd be times where she's just passed out for hours, maybe even a day at a time. It was
Brothers taking care of brothers.
yeah, brothers taking care of brothers. Pretty much, I had an oldest brother named Justin, and he really kind of sought out for us and made sure that we were eating. Make sure, you know, like whether it's top ramen, cereal, pancakes, whatever, you know, just the gist. Oh, when you're a kid, that's like gourmet right there. You're feeling like you're eating at Olive Garden.
But that's a toll on Justin's mental health for sure.
Was that the end of your relationship with your mom?
No, actually. So crazy thing is, we kept this hush hush on the, like, no one really knew about this from the system, my foster parents. So when I became about 16 and I got my driver's license, I ran into my mom in Reno.
Oh.
And so I used to go visit her on the weekends, telling my foster parents that I was going to hang out with a friend. And so I was like, hey, I'm going to go spend the night, you know, over at this friend's house. And then my friend's parents at the time were like, hey, yeah, we'll definitely cover this up for you.
That's kind of crazy because most people are like sneaking out to get away from their parents.
Yeah.
You're sneaking out to go see your parents.
But and, like the one thing that always like rested on my heart when I was a kid is like I just wanted to know why, the reason why, you know, all of this happened. And so getting to relate back into my mom, she was actually in a clean state of mind again. She found this really cool boyfriend that was like a trucker, and he really got her out of the slumps. And so really getting to know her was something that was really awesome. And so at the same time, like I forgave her for everything.
At that time, was she sober?
Yeah, so she was sober at this point in time in her life, and so it was just really cool to see her, you know, like progress of where she was back then to like now, and so it was like super cool to see. And so we got to grow a really good, strong relationship for like 2 years, and then she passed away. And so after, so she ended up passing away when I was 18. And so, but the one thing that I take out of it is that at least I got to see her, see where I came from, who I was, and you know, at least I got that relationship before she went. So.
Did you ever have a relationship with your dad, or was he ever in the picture?
So, from stories that I've heard about my dad, like he was a really bad dude, like really, really bad dude, and my mom was like really abused by him, and he's like pretty much the reason why she got into her drug addiction.
Okay.
And so she packed up her stuff one night. This is how the story goes. She packs up all our stuff, and then we moved in with our grandparents. And so, again, I'm like just maybe like 1 or 2 at this point. So she ran away from him. He went to work one night. She packed up everything, like bags and stuff, and then just took off, got in the car, and never looked back. And then a couple weeks later, the story goes that he ended up, you know, doing a Grand Theft Auto and home invasion. And so he went to prison for a very long time. And so we never saw him, heard from him. And so she told us that story. But again, there's always 2 sides to every story.
Have you ever tried to track him down?
I did. One time. So I was like probably 18 years old. I go on, you know, like People Finder or whatever. And you just type in their name. And so it was so weird because like going on this People Finder, I type in his whole name and I see my brother's names. I see my name, and it's all saying pretty much that he was deceased. It said deceased on it. So I was like, oh, you know, okay, he passed away, move on. And then out of nowhere, 2 years ago, he added me on Facebook.
Our wedding.
Oh,
like,
shit.
our wedding.
Yeah, like right before.
It's like it's a ghost.
Yeah, and like I don't know if he just got on Facebook.
No, your brother reached out to you and was
Oh,
like,
yeah.
yo, dude, like this dude's like saying he's our dad, and I
Yeah.
was like going on thinking his dad's dead.
Yeah, I thought for like maybe 4 or 5 years at this point, my dad was dead. You know, like I was
So what
like,
happened? What'd you do?
So he added me on Facebook, and it was just so weird. So he like adds me on Facebook, and he was like, "Hey, I've been waiting a long time for this."
Wow.
And I was like,
So what?
"Yeah." Like, so when you go into foster care as a kid, they seal your record. You cannot find that person. So like you are literally like gone. You're ghosted. So anyone that tries to ever look for you in your family, if you're in the foster care system, they seal your records. They will not show you where you live. Like you're protected just for those instances, you know.
If it's like a close adoption or an adoption, but in serious circumstances, like both of ours, like they didn't know what state you were in. Like,
yeah, he said that. He was like, as soon as I got out of prison, I tried to find you kids for the longest time. He was like, but I could not find any information.
So the story was true about him doing all that stuff?
Yeah. So I asked him about, you know, a few things, and he said that he was very troubled, you know, when we were young. He was highly addicted to meth, and he said that he sobered up. And the thing is like some of the messages that he was saying, I was just like, but are you sober? You know, like. And so he asked, you know, and the crazy thing is he lives in Idaho, which, you know, he told me he lives in Idaho and what city, and I can't remember the city, but I remember Google mapping it, and it was 3.5 hours away. And I was just like, okay, so he lives fairly close.
And then your dad and his like
and then I have
siblings,
a half sister out there, and so she added me, and so like I was looking at their pictures and everything, but I have like no resemblance to them at all.
Do you feel any sort of like obligation to have a relationship with him at all?
No.
Good.
Not at all.
Good.
Not at all, because you know, coming to almost 30 years old, I look at it like you could have found multiple reasons after I turned 18 to come find me or something. You know, like you could have just tried like 10, 11 years ago saying, hey, I tried to find you because now your case is open to the public again. You're no longer a kid in the foster care system, so they open you to the public again.
Right.
And so like if you really wanted to try it, you could have, you know, like I see it as like how much effort did you put
So do you
into it?
hold like any resentment towards him?
No.
Good.
No, I moved on a long time ago and I came to an amends and peace with it, because the thing is like growing up in these circumstances, you can't hold any grudges or like vendettas because it eats you up inside as a person. Because you can't control other people,
Right.
you know, you can't control people's actions or how they feel or whatever, you know, like you literally just have to be your own person and find peace within yourself.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And of course, forgiveness, like again, yeah, I forgive, but I don't forget, you know. Like,
Are you still in contact with him at all?
no, I kind of ended that. It was just super
He
weird.
was a weird dude. He added me. The sister added me.
What about your sister? Your
Um,
half-sister?
Yeah, so I have
But
apparently a
it
half
doesn't
sister.
look like
Yeah.
it. Like it looks like I still swear that he's not his dad. It's all. We'll never know the truth, but he doesn't look like them at all.
My got like
It's-
6 brothers out of the way now.
It's crazy.
Right.
You know, there's just like that feeling. I don't know. And his dad was weird. His dad was giving us some
What
weird
about
vibes
you?
on Facebook, and we were gonna just shut that door before we felt like it wasn't safe. Because I told him, like, he gave me the vibes of like, don't leave me in a room alone with him type vibe. You know, he was posting really inappropriate things on Facebook, and I'm like, baby,
You know,
if
it's
this
weird,
is your
it's like-
dad,
Was that as
You
far
don't-
as like the relationship went? Was
Pretty
through
much.
message? You guys never physically
No.
met each other?
No.
we like didn't feel like it would be safe. I don't think.
Well, yeah, you gotta trust.
And
your
like
dad.
I was like checking it, and of course like peeping in on his like Facebook, and he just like was just a really weird dude.
Like we were questioning if he was using it or not, and like it's just like a door that was closed that you're like, wow, I don't even freaking know.
And I was
Why
afraid
do
to
I-
open it back up,
Yeah.
you know, like I had the chance to be able to pursue it and open it, but there was something within me, and of course you always want to listen to your gut feeling.
Yeah.
Right.
And like my gut feeling was telling me, like screaming at me, like, don't do this.
Yeah, and
like,
if
do
you
not
have
walk past
the
Dylan's
strength
path.
to move on, you know, you should trust that.
And exactly, and I was all like, I'm already here at this point in my life, and you know, like, it was just super weird.
How about your brothers? Do you still have a relationship with them?
Off and on.
Did you guys were at the same foster home?
Yeah, so
throughout
we were
that
brought
time?
up in the same foster home. So which was again very fortunate, because you know I hear a lot of siblings out there that get split up. You know, like maybe one goes to an all boys home, and if you have a sister, she's not gonna be able to go there. You know, it's an all boys home, so like you just get separated through the system. And I've heard tragic stories about that, but we were very fortunate on that part to be able to stick together, because we thought again only 2 weeks, you know, but 13 years.
So back to that, what kind of experiences did you have in the home? Was it okay or was it rough or?
It was pretty rough. They were very strict, very strict people.
And this was in Reno.
Yes, yeah. So this was in Reno, Nevada, and you know, at one thing
How
that
many kids were in the home?
at one point in time, we had
sometimes.
we
Like,
had
give me that
10.
money.
Yeah, they're like
So we had like
15 kids in
That's a
there.
really
yeah, we had 10, and it was weird. It was all military style. We had bunk beds,
Oh, shit.
so like it would be 3 sets of bunk beds, and we'd have 6 kids per room. And then they had a biological son who would get, you know, of course, his own room, his own
Like,
stuff.
They're
This
like
motherfucker.
royalty.
But-
like,
Yeah, exactly.
no, that's a real
It
thing
was
that
the-
people like they have, and people do it. They have their own kids. They'll do foster cares. Like they want to be good people, and there are great people, foster parents that we've experienced. But for some, where they do have a biological kid at home, they get
So the
brand
kid
new
comes
clothes,
first.
These are the
get
money
their-
makers.
Yeah, they get the
You know,
preferential
they
treatment.
get, and as they're, but
Fair
we'll get the
channel.
hand-me-downs, we'll get the, hey, you do the chores, hey, you know, there's definitely you see the
And
noticeable.
It's
difference
fucking
between-
dangerous if you think about
It's
it.
the favoritism part.
And that does
and-
something to someone as a kid,
Exactly.
you know, when you're like, wow, I'm fucking not worth that, and like, why don't I get this? And
Let's
you
jump
start
this
questioning.
motherfucker.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was,
You know?
it was pretty crazy though. It's like growing
I
up
want
with
what he has.
like the 10, and it was, you know, a mixture. We had like 3 foster sisters. We always called each other like brothers and sisters at one point in time when we all got like a strong bond, because we're all going through the same
Yeah.
shit, you know. So like all of us knew what we were going through, so we all kind of stuck together. But the one thing about them being super strict, at least they were very honest. You know, like being in that home for like 13 years. I remember it was probably coming up on 5 years. And I finally grew the courage. I was like, you know what? You guys are like a mom and dad at this point. You make sure I'm clothed. You make sure that I have food. You make sure that, you know, I'm going to be okay. So I came out and was like, okay, I'm gonna start calling mom and dad and see how this works. And I called, my foster mom one day, mom, and she's like, I'm gonna just be honest with you. She's like, you are not my kid. You're not gonna be anywhere near my family. She's all, you're just a paycheck to me.
Wow.
And she's all, but at the same time, I was just like, at least she was honest. At least,
Holy fuck.
you didn't have to.
Yeah, but to tell a
Pretend.
child that's pretty fucked up.
Dude, as a kid, yeah, it mentally fucks you up. It does. It you kind of just get
Take off on
blindsided.
that bitch.
Right? And in my head, I was just like, maybe I'm
Where's
just
this
not.
money going next? I'm about
Well,
to get
as a
some
child,
money.
it's hard to step back and be like, oh, well, she's being honest and she's telling me what I need to know. But at the same time, it's like your brain doesn't process it that way as a small child. You know what I mean?
And, they never physically abused us, ever. And, you hear again in some foster care systems or foster parents out there, like locking their kids in closets and, not feeding them or whatever the circumstances may be. We never got physically hit or anything. They just more mentally abused us in a sense. You see this little
Abuse
kid.
is abuse. Bro.
Yeah, exactly.
Don't.
And as a little kid, being so lost to the world, don't know why you're here, don't know why these circumstances happen to you personally.
Mentally, it fucking takes longer to heal from
It
from
does.
something that's fucked up than something physical.
Right.
And so it was pretty tough hearing those type of things and just seeing that not physical but verbal abuse.
Mm-hmm.
And it was so funny because she'd be so nice to everyone that comes in from the outside, but once those people leave, oh my gosh, it was like hell. And it was crazy because being so strict, this is where I learned my work ethic, and I give them kudos on this. But every Saturday morning, 4 o'clock sharp, she'd come in these army fatigues with her shirt tucked in.
Damn.
She would literally get us all up, and we'd all have to. It was like military. We'd all line up, get dressed, and make sure nothing was on the floor, because if anything was on the floor, it gets thrown away, and everything has to go in a specific spot. So you get your clothes on, and then you work from sun up to sundown. They just bought this home when we first moved in, and it was pretty in bad shape. There was no grass, there was no gardens, nothing. We as kids, they not only got paid by the government, but they got free labor out of it too, because
It's pretty smart.
we would.
It's pretty smart to think about it.
Yeah.
You know what
I mean, if you're a shitty person,
Whatever. dude.
Shit, you ever need some workers, bro?
We
Just
should,
some foster
we should
kids.
start a business, like a flip business, right? Where we take
Flipping kids?
It is pretty much like that, but it was so weird because with my foster mom, we saw so many kids come and go through that household. We would see so many kids come and go, but we always stayed. And she loved, for whatever reason, she had heart for my brother Justin a lot, and she had really good heart for my brother Nathan, to an extent. But for me, I was always the whipping post, and it was crazy because, and I kind of analyzed this as myself, and people were like, oh, maybe you just kind of overthink this. But as I was growing up, they got all new shit. They got new clothes, new shoes, whatever that they needed, they got. Me, on the other hand, it was all hand-me-downs. They're like, oh, you don't need it. You're the youngest one. You're going to go ahead and take whatever they have. And as we got older, they started getting their license. They ended up getting cars. They went out and bought them cars. For me, I had to get a job at the age of 16 to save up for a car. And my foster dad at the time, I'll never forget this, he used to go to auctions, and he used to buy these cars, fix them up, flip them on the side as a little side hustle he did. And I remember working this job and saving up enough money, and I had $1,500. And I come home and I'm like, all right, I'm ready to buy this first car. And he had this Oldsmobile Cutlass Supreme, 1969, all black ribs. I was all like, I can see myself doing that. And so I had to buy it off them for $1,500. And so just kind of seeing them come in with new cars and stuff like that, I was just like, okay, I got this little hoopty, but hey, at least it gets
You
you
stay there till you were.
I know, right? No, I didn't realize. I didn't realize what I had until it was already
Did
gone.
you stay there till you were 18?
No, so it was crazy. As I was growing up in the foster care system too, going through elementary school, I had this really cool friend, and she was a girl, and just knowing these experiences, I met some more friends through her. But I'll never forget this situation either. And this is how it was looked back as a foster kid in these times. It could change now. I don't know how the system is now, but back then if you were in foster care, you were automatically assumed that you were the bad child. That like you were the reason why you went into foster care. Like your parents couldn't handle you. That's
like
what
out of
they
control
Like
kids or
outside
kids
of
that
Yeah, so a lot of people
runaways,
And
or
so-
they thought, but people didn't think it was like, oh, their parents
Not
didn't
because of
feed them or
abuse
care for
or-
them, you know.
Yeah.
Their parents are like, oh, those are dirty bad kids.
Well, I mean, as a kid too, like we don't see that.
Yeah.
You know, like if we were peers, you know what I mean, like in the same class or something.
But as soon as someone says foster kid, even teachers,
They're like,
parents,
foster kid,
everyone's
what
all,
do you say?
like, oh my gosh, a foster kid?
Yeah.
And so I remember this girl coming up to me, and we used to hang out at recess, and she was all like, I can't be your friend anymore. And I was like, why? She was like, because, you know, you told me you were in foster care. And I went home and I told my mom and dad, and my mom said that she doesn't want me to hang out with you because you're a bad kid.
Wow.
And I was like, ouch. And so she stopped hanging out with me, stopped talking to me. So it was just weird. You were just kind of like that lonely child for a little bit. And of course, you know, I always tried to like just make friends, and I stopped talking.
You don't make
I never ever told another kid in elementary school that I was in foster care.
But they, in
because I was
a way,
afraid.
they know it's an unspoken thing. I was told one time they couldn't be friends with me because like, oh, foster care kids get lice, which is true. You have like, I had like minimum of 10 kids per house that I was in, and one person gets head lice. They just didn't even check. They just shaved everyone pretty much. Like, when I went into foster care, I was like 5 and my hair was super, super long, and I like took pride in it. And the first thing they did was bowl cut. Like, it's gone. They like, you don't even have a gender at that point almost. I look like a dude, you know, and you go to school like that, and people
that's a mental
don't,
fuck
yeah,
also.
people don't want to be your friend, and they're like, why'd you get your hair shaved? They know, like, oh, why? So they're dirty kids. You don't get the hygiene products that you get, so you are the smelly kid.
And kids
You
don't
know,
know that.
exactly.
And you
It
don't
doesn't have to.
understand
Kids
what
don't know
it is,
kids
you
to
know?
like bully. Like, kids learn that from their surroundings. So like for my like, cause they went home and like, oh, I met this kid. He's in the foster care system, and they're like, oh no, like, how dare, like, you know what I mean? Like, how dare that kid be in the same class as my kid?
And that's
Like,
what I
you
say,
literally get treated like
the
a.
average experience is not what y'all
Right.
went through. You know what I mean? So it's hard for us to even understand on any kind of level of what you guys went through or, you know, experienced.
And like the thing is like how I always lived through that, and you know, like growing up as in getting into middle school and stuff like that. I know everyone has their own stories and stuff like that, but I never wanted like this situation to define who I'm gonna be. And it's really hard to push through those limits right there, especially going into the middle school age. You know, you just know that no one gives a fuck about you. And you have to learn about that at such a young age. And it sucks because when you look at a kid, you're like, okay, here's this pure joy and happiness, you know, like, and just even as a baby,
Yeah.
you know, like, it's so innocent, it has pure heart, it's like just gold right there. And then you get to define how that kid's gonna be raised and what situations you're gonna put that kid through, you know?
You either
But, like,
tough skin or you crumble from that shit.
Yeah,
for sure.
and so like you just get used to just being alone, and like, and it's okay like to be alone in an extent, but when you're alone for a very long time, you're just like, fuck, am I just by myself in this world full of people?
That's when you go to like Tinder. And
That's
shit.
where-
That's when you start
And
on
that's
Tinder.
where, that's where like you feel like it
Let's
completed
switch
that.
gears a little bit. I want to hear a little bit about your story.
So
Also,
tell us like when you entered, and
Yeah.
your story too, because it's a little bit different than his.
The ages are super similar. I went in about 5. Before that, though, it was kind of like, it's crazy because you look back and you're like, what's real? What's a dream? What really happened? What were you told from court documents? What you were told by foster parents? But the first like 5 years, my mom, dad struggled with addiction. Meth was their drug of choice. It was kind of a downward spiral. When I turned 4 or 5, I just remember constantly moving homes before foster care. My mom kind of always trying to get away from my dad. My dad was abusive on pretty much all ends of the spectrum. Super dangerous guy. To this day, my husband has it concealed because of it. Coming back to Oregon was like I wasn't ready to be open those books, open those wounds back up, but I knew a part of it needed to happen so that I could heal. But we like moved around a lot as a kid. My mom just kind of just trying to keep us safe, really trying to do what she could given her circumstances with battling her addiction. We spent a lot of time with my grandparents, my aunts and my uncles, who were trying to like just be there for the kids. And at this time, I have an older brother who's 34, 35, who has CP, cerebral palsy. He's mentally retarded, and that comes from abuse as a kid, from birth, pretty much.
Wow.
So he was 30 something when you were.
No, he's 5 years older than me.
Okay.
So when I was born, he was 5.
And you guys looked in class at that time?
Yes. And my mom had custody of us too, with my dad. We have the same, my older brother and I had the same biological dad. And like I said, what I remember bits and pieces. I remember different homes. Again, like I've had that when I came back here when I was 21, I had to like ask my
Where'd
family.
you go?
I grew up in the foster care system. So from 5 to like 10, I was adopted when I was 10 and I moved to Pennsylvania.
Wow.
And it was like a closed adoption, no contact. Like they literally told us at a visitation that it was like a party. They made it look like it was a party.
Going away party.
Yeah, but we didn't realize this is the last time you're going to see your family party. And then literally the next day we were on a plane. And that just closed.
You
like
said
that.
we.
So yeah, I have 2 younger brothers and a little sister who, after I was taken into the system and my older brother, my mom was pregnant with my mid brother who, he's 25 now. But my mom was pregnant with him when we were taken. And so the last 3 siblings, my 2 little brothers and my little sister, were kind of born into the system immediately. And then the first home that I was in, my brother got taken, like we got split up because he had CP. He had to go to a home that could like meet his needs.
Yeah.
And then I went to a home with like basically an orphanage type setup.
Both
like,
in the same state or no?
Both here in Klamath. And then my brother Darian was born, and then he was placed into a special home because he was born a pound and translucent. He had a hole in his heart. Again, addiction. My mom could not stop doing meth while she was pregnant with any of her kids. So we all have some sort of physical problem, mental, surprisingly we have not become addicts or, anything of that nature. It's just crazy. I was told from a young age that like, don't fuck around with that shit. Like, don't even try it once. Cause like you could, you're more success. Like, just statistically, like you're going against the world,
You beat the odds.
Yeah, in a sense, but
So when you went to Pennsylvania, did you go by yourself?
no. So it was a full-on adoption. So when we were in the system for 5 years, all my siblings being born into it. Throughout the time, we were kind of scattered for a little bit. Finally, there was like the system got its shit together and realized it's important to keep siblings together. And also because my siblings were being sexually assaulted, I was being abused. We needed to feel like we were being protected. And I pretty much was like, I need my siblings. Like, I'm their mom. Like, I'm mom. Stop doing this to my family. Like, we need to be together. And so the last home we were in, we were finally all together. And my sister was, when we were finally adopted, my sister was 1 year. My little brother was 3. My other brother was 5. I was 9. And then Kyle stayed here. He stayed. He's still in the same home he was taken in freaking 25 years ago. And they've continued to, and I have a relationship now with his, like, foster mom is what he still calls her, but he has his mom.
Like his mom.
Yeah, she, but it's just a special home for kids that have all sorts of needs, but coming back. So when we moved and we closed that chapter, like, yeah, all my little siblings came with me, and our adopted parents, they kind of made that happen. It was super important to keep us together.
I was gonna ask, was somebody like advocating for y'all, like helping y'all out?
Yeah, so you get assigned like caseworkers, someone that kind of speaks on your behalf in court. But like Mike said, you're pretty much a part of like those big decisions. Like I remember going to the court case where my mom and my dad, and they had to like separate them because there was like safety issues, and
I mean, like,
that's pretty much them like ripping the rights out and like you're just like, okay.
I mean, like going through the abuse in the houses or wherever you're staying between you and your siblings or whatever, like and when you tell somebody, were they actually helping you?
We were literally just talking about this.
So it's
the other day.
Or how did you end up getting help? Like,
so you think you do the right thing by reaching out, talking about it, like going to your caseworkers. If you go to so if there's a kid abusing kids, say that's happening in the house, which happens. You go to like the foster parents, and they either like minimize it. Oh no, you didn't see that, or that could be happening. One time it was a situation with me, and that was what kind of triggered me becoming a mute and feeling like I couldn't talk about my feelings. And I still struggle with that as an adult, like feeling like my feelings matter. Because as a kid, I would like tell what I saw and what I felt, or like what was being done to me, and people are like, "You're fucking lying." Like that can't be happening to you. Like these are good people. Or they'd be like, "You're a pathological liar. You're a foster care kid. You don't know what's real and what's not. Your parents are addicts. You don't know."
It's crazy.
You're literally
dismissed.
You're literally just like, you vocalize, "Hey, this happened," or "I saw that happen," or "that person did that to my brother." Okay, we'll go to, or immediately you just get moved homes. Mm-hmm. There's a book that is actually my adopted parents have it on the East Coast, and I like want to get my hands on it again. But it's literally like a photo, like one of those like scrapbooks, but they made it like my life story. So it's got like insoles with like all our court documents and like literally like verbiage of like what people said in court about us, and like the documentation that followed you like a trail from one home to the next, because it literally was like, there's a paper that says Danica Clay, was mine, which came to our home on this date. She had, and it literally had a page of belongings, and you were lucky if there was like 30 things on that list. It literally listed 2 pairs of underwear, 2 pairs of socks.
1 sock.
If you're lucky, yeah.
You didn't have the other.
Like you had like listed out your belongings, and then it'd be like medical section, like what they got treated for, if they got shots while they were under your care. And I will never remember, like it was like my second home. My first home that I went into was like an emergency home. We got taken at like 2 a.m. They called someone up, or like placed in the middle of the fucking night. We were just like found in a shopping cart being pushed in the streets. And so cops rolled up and pretty much were like separated my mom from us, and I fell asleep in like a cop's arms, and I woke up like in a bunk bed. And like, what the fuck just happened? Like that was so normal at the time. Like I remember those days leading up to it. My mom got into a fight with one of her boyfriends, and again, like she got kicked out, so the kids get kicked out. My mom was super pregnant with my one brother, my older brother, who had CP, me, who's at 5 years old, feeding my brother and taking care of things. And that's kind of how I grew up, was like changing my brother's diapers. And there's a story of like how DHS got involved. Was we were living on a house on East Main, which is like the taxi cab place now. If you've ever like driven, like going to Gino's. Yeah, those used to be like homes, and we lived on the one on the left side. And there was like a morning, I guess I was 4 years old. This is what my grandparents and my aunts and uncles said that happened. That I was like walking up and down the streets, knocking on doors, asking for peanut butter and jelly, because my older brother was 10 and mentally challenged, and like he couldn't cook for us. And they were like, you were out there, you knocked on some old lady's door, and you were just like super polite and said, "Hey, may I please have some peanut butter and jelly sandwiches?" And she instantly like, "What is this?" And she asked how old I was, and I was like 4. Yeah. And she was like, "I'm calling the cops. Like, where's your mom?" And she was like, "Sleeping."
Did you get the peanut butter and jelly sandwiches?
I don't remember.
I feel like if you did,
yeah. But that was kind of like the gate opened, and then like they were involved. Checking in, and like
it doesn't sound like either one of you guys, like, a lot of people think that the system gets involved in their life for all the wrong reasons. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And like sometimes it happens and it's unfortunate, but it sounds like they got involved at the right time in both of your lives, even though like shitty stuff happened throughout your foster care.
You have to be thankful for that.
stuck. I'm either happy or I honestly don't give a fuck. I'm in a rut. I know who I am and he just ain't giving up. One life to live and so I live it up. Sometimes I'm feeling way down, but I stay grounded, knowing that heavy is the head that wears this dang crown. So I stay around. I was built to deal with all the bullshit dealt. Then I turn it into fire when these beats are melt. And I stick to me in minds, I don't need y'all's help. Like fuck y'all, I don't care one bit. If you don't like me, you can suck my dick. If you can't understand, well it is what it is. You can cry me